Hello, welcome back to Darth Snoogen's Toy Reviews. Today we're going to do something a little different. We've been comparing in previous videos He-man and Skeletor throughout the different lines. But there's a line that I'm not going to say that I failed to include. I'm going to say that I omitted on purpose because I'm not a huge fan. So back in 2018, Super7 released this line of Masters of the Universe vintage style figures that are based on the Filmation animated series. So they're not really supposed to be based on the action figures, but more on the animated show. So that's why some of the designs are a little different. But everyone was excited when these came out because it had been so long. I mean, it had been since since the year 2000 when we had the commemorative line that we had a 5.5-inch He-Man figure and that standard Buck action figure. So when these came out, they were all pre-order, and I remember trying to pre-order, and I remember, like so many other people, having my orders canceled, and it was a nightmare. So I'll say up front, I'm not a huge fan of Super 7, and I guess I hold a grudge a little bit for them. They have put out some great stuff. But this line in particular, I'm not a fan of. And the reason why is the QC on these figures was absolutely awful. So right now, they may look good on the shelf. If you still have yours in the package, I would leave them in the package because they're terrible figures. So we'll start with He-Man. As you can see, he's got that really weird looking head sculpt. And I get that it's supposed to look more like the animated show, but I don't get that. The hair is so much more exaggerated than the show. You do have that shiny plastic, and on the surface it looks very much like the original figure. You do get that spring back action. One thing to notice is there's a lot less sculpting, so even like his gauntlets, there's no detail there. That's on both sides. They painted it, unlike the original that doesn't have it painted, but they didn't do any sculpting on it. It's the same with the boots. Pretty much no sculpting on those at all. So the problem I've had with these is the legs. They don't stand very well. You have to balance the best you can. They didn't have the bands, so they tried to use an articulation point. I'm assuming this is like a ball joint up in here, but you get a lot less movement, and based on how well it was QC'd, this one you can't really do anything with on that left leg. The right leg you can move around a little bit. The left leg gets hung. Now I know you could probably take it and heat it up or put it in some hot water, and by the time I got this, I was so frustrated with it, just from the weight and getting it out of the package and being unhappy with the final product. I've basically just put this away and not messed with it. So his harness, you'll notice, is just like the animated show. It doesn't have the little red notches on it. They did make it just like the vintage as far as how it attaches, but I will say I don't like how low it sits down in his chest. Constantly feel like I need to push it up. You get the regular arm rotation. So like I said, on the surface, it looks like it would be a good figure. You do get the power sword, and it is a full power sword. It's not a half sword. And you also get his shield, which is a little smaller than the vintage shield, and I found that when I try to attach it to his arm, it wants to come apart. But so there we have that. I'm going to put him to the back, and let's take a look at our Skeletor. Now the Skeletor I like a lot more than the He-Man, mainly because I think that head sculpt is fantastic. I really wish we could have got this head sculpt in the Origins line. You do get the animated series version of the Havoc staff, not the solid purple version. Of course, he's got his regular armor. He's got his little belt there. Another thing I found weird is he just has the solid boots. He doesn't have the toes sticking out. And it is a brighter blue. It's not quite that light blue that the original one is. This is darker. But his attachments are all on just the same way, with the way they attach. He also comes with his version of the power sword, and it's a full sword as well. It's not a half. He has that spring back action. His legs are a little better than the He-Man, but because of how that He-Man is kind of a little wonky, I don't really pose these guys much. Kind of scared to. I'd rather keep them in one piece. So we've previously looked at He-Man and Skeletor, and I don't want to beat a dead horse on this, but it makes sense to go ahead and bring in our vintage and our origins that these look very much like, just so we can kind of get a comparison. You got your vintage, you got your Super 7, and you have your origins. And as you can see, there's the differences between the three sometimes seem slight and sometimes seem pretty drastic, but all in all, it's Skeletor. It looks like Skeletor. It's good enough. It just kind of feels, other than the face sculpt, it just kind of feels like a very generic, very bland design for Skeletor. Alright, so let's compare our He-Mans. So yeah, you can see how he lines up with our vintage and our origins figures. And this certainly has that glossy sheen to the plastic that's more in line with the original than, of course, the origins, which has that matte finish. But I would still prefer the origins over that Super 7 any day. Alright, so what do you guys think? Are you a fan of these figures? Do you personally own some of these Super 7 vintage style figures? Have you had the QC issues that so many other people have had? Sound off in the comments to let me know your thoughts on this. Are you a purist like me and prefer to have your He-Man figures come straight from Mattel? Or does none of that matter to you? Again, I appreciate you guys watching. I enjoy doing these videos, and I really appreciate when you guys take a moment to watch it and give it a like. That helps me out a lot. So you guys have a great day. Have a safe weekend. Thanks.